Hey there, Apano here, and I am back with another video. In this video I'm going to be going through how to do aerial attacks such as nair, down air, up air, fair and bear, or back air. If you want access to the files and scripts in this video, check out the Patreon down below and don't forget to subscribe. So without further ado, let's get straight into this video. As a quick disclaimer, make sure you have seen part 8 and part 9 of this tutorial series before you continue this tutorial. The first thing you need to do is go into the Fox script, and under the Fox script where you have the tilt attacks, you want to now scroll all the way down below that and add in now some aerial attacks or air attacks. So the first one I have for Fox is nair. The second one I have is up air. The third one I have is bear or back air. The fourth one I have is fair or forward air. And the fifth one I have is dair or down air. And so what I did for me to get all of these values for the hitboxes was I looked at Rivals of Aether's Fox mod, and I looked at what frames does the hitbox come out with that character. Another thing that I did was I looked at the Smash Bros wiki and looked at the frame data for Fox in Smash Ultimate and in Smash Melee. Alright, and so from here the next thing you want to do is go into the state machine, and we're going to add in some new states. These are all the states that we're going to add. Air attack, nair, up air, back air, forward air and down air. And so the next thing that we're going to do from here is actually implement the code for each of these states that we've just added. So what we want to do is we want to scroll down to around where the ground attack states are, and maybe above the ground attack, because obviously these are the aerial attacks, we're going to add the air attack state. And so here is the code that you want to copy. Alright, so here is the code. Some few things for you to note is the air movement function that we're using, and how depending on the direction that our character is facing, pressing left or right when you press the attack button in the air will do either a back air or a forward air. So just for a quick little explanation, the reason why we're using the air movement function here is because whilst you're doing an air attack or an aerial, you're still moving as though you're in the air and not as though you're on the ground. And so with that being the case, we want our air movement to be the first thing that happens whilst we are carrying out any of these attacks. The next state to implement is going to be the nair state or neutral air, and the code should look something like this. So here's the code for the nair state. This is the code that allows it so that you can do the neutral air attack. So for example, on line 518 you can see that we have the air movement function, and so we're going to have a general formula for each of the aerial attacks, and that formula is going to be that on frame 0 we're going to call our parents a nair attack or attack, and then what we're going to do is check whether or not it returns true. Remember, it only returns true once the attack has been completed. And so if you go back to the state machine, once the attack is basically completed, the lag frames are going to be equal to 0, and the frame count is going to reset, and you're going to go into the air state. And so we're going to do this for the rest of the states, and I'll show you what all of those look like. So the rest of the states look something along the lines of this, where you have, let's say, the up air. And so on frame 0 you call up air, and then if up air is true, then lag frames will be equal to 0. You make the frames equal to 0, and then you go into the air state. And so all of this is quite similar. The only really unique move that we have here is fair, where you still have air movement, but the way the fair works in this game is by repeating itself. So once fair is done, fair will go into fair and then into forward air and into forward air again. And so the way I do this is by saying that once fair is equal to true, then we're going to give it lag frames of 30, and we're going to reset the frame timer and go back into fair. The reason why I have this code over here is so that my player character is able to jump out of the forward air attack. So this code is a copy of the code from the air state that allows you to double jump. And so from here I can go into showing you how to carry out the animations. And as for doing the animations, carrying out the animations is the same as any other state. You scroll down to the animation part of the state, and then you want to go into maybe above where all the ground attacks are, and you want to add in these states. There, up air, bear, forward air, down air, and that's it. You can also add air attack if you want. similar to how we have a ground attack, like so. And so we call this air, and then we make this over here air as well. But again, this would only be for you to be sure that everything is working the way it's meant to. So now that we have the code for the animations and we have the code for the attacks themselves, we now need to develop some code so that when we press the attack button in the air, the animations and the attack themselves will be carried out. Alright, so from here what we're going to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom of the state machine, and we're going to have another states include function that makes it so that only when these states are fulfilled, this function will become true. So the function that you want to create looks something like this. Alright, so this is the function that you want to create. This function is basically saying that if you're in the air state or any other state that you want, and you're not touching the ground, then it returns true. If you're not in any of these states, or if you are in any of these states where you are touching the ground, it returns false. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to demonstrate to you the ability of being able to combine attacks, and for you to set which states you want to be able to do aerial attacks in. So I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. Okay, so one of the last things we're going to do is scroll all the way to the top of the state machine in get transitions, but above this statement over here, and we're going to copy some code. So as you can see, this code looks quite complicated, but it's not. All this is saying is that if you press the attack button and aerial is true, so if you're in the air or those states that you specified, if you're pressing up, you're going to up air. If you're pressing down, you're going to down air. And this is what determines whether you're doing a forward air or a back air. For you to do a forward air, you need to go into parent.direction, the direction function, which determines whether or not you're facing to the left or to the right. If you're facing to the right, you get 1. If you're facing to the left, it's -1. So if you're facing to the right and you're pressing to the left, that's back air. If you're facing to the right and you press to the right, then you get forward air, and vice versa. If you end up not pressing any one of these, then you get a nair. And so that is how you do aerial attacks. And now I'm about to demonstrate it to you. Now, before we move on to demonstrating the aerial code, we want to scroll all the way down to the bottom and add to this list for this landing function. This landing function basically says that if you're in any of these states and you're touching the ground, you will go into the landing state. And so you want to replace this with this. Add on nair, up air, back air, forward air, and there to the list of states that you can be in, where if you touch the ground, you will go into the landing state. Okay, and so from here what we're going to do is we're going to go into the test stage, go to 2D, and then we're going to add in the Fox scene. We're going to add 1 and then 2. Don't forget to set the ID, so set the ID to player 1, and then for Fox 2 we're setting the ID to player 2. And then we're going to drag out the Fox characters. And then we're going to play the game. And as you can see, I can move around, and now I can do aerial attacks. So as you can see, the aerial attacks are working the way I want them to. That's up air. Here's nair. Okay, so I found what the error is. The error was that when I said body.in air for the hitbox, what I was meant to do was change this to say if body is not on the floor. So I can just change this real quick, and then I can play the game again, and nair should work. So if I do nair, as you can see, everything's working. There you go. One last problem that I've seemed to notice as well is that in certain attacks, such as the first hit of the up air that I've programmed, if I do the first hit, like such, you can see that the character is stuck in Hitstun. If you want to fix this, what you can do is go into the state machine, and where it says the Hitstun state, you want to go to where it says if the parent.frame is equal to Hitstun, you want to change this to if it is larger than or equal to. And what you will see is that for the first hit of up air, there is no longer that freezing glitch. This glitch was actually prominent in my demonstration of this game that I made when I was demonstrating this game for the first time. And so without further ado, that's it for the tutorial.